Welcome, 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 welcome. Jennifer, welcome. Thank you for sharing your camera. Roman, I love the very action photo. That's a very action photo. I love that. Welcome. Abby, you're going to have to give me permission to share.
You are right. There you go.
All right, thank you. So all right. Abby, do we look good here?
Yes.
You ready to record, or are you recording?
I'm recording already.
Oh, wonderful. So welcome to today's presentation on law firm strategies, managing interruptions. I think I may put up the wrong one. Did I put up the wrong one? I got the wrong one? Okay, good.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Hey, Roman, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. And so the focus on this is looking at interruption from two perspectives. Number one, where they frustrate you because there's something for you to learn. And number two, how do you take the frustration and make money from the frustration? That's where most lawyers kind of miss this. So as we go through this exercise, I want you to listen for the frustration of the interruption. And then the question is, how do we make money from this? Now, from my perspective, just so those of you who have never met me before, my name is Steve Riley. I am a recovering litigator. I've got 30 years plus under my belt as an attorney, 10 to 12 as a litigator, 10 to 12 as a estate planning and elder law lawyer, in the past 10 years here with Atticus as a practice advisor. So I've been where you've been. I've gone through this process of managing interruptions and really transforming them into profitability for years. It's one of my favorite things to do from a perspective of learning about how to take these interruptions and make them work for you. And our company, Atticus, has been around for 35 years now. And we really help lawyers grow their practices and go for the double win of cultivating a great life. Now, before I get too far, I do have a for-pay workshop. Today's workshop is at no charge to you. It's a free workshop. But I am teaching a workshop on the 24th for 90 minutes on how to get referrals from other lawyers. This is one of the things that I built both my prior practices around and taught other lawyers how to do, which is how to get other lawyers to refer you good work. So if you're interested in that, Abby's got a discount code for you. It's I think a $90 workshop, but she's got a discount code for you if you're interested, and she'll put that in the chat box. We also have an upcoming free workshop that Lori Pulvermacher on our team's doing, which is called Leveraging LinkedIn for Your Law Practice, which is a fantastic course. Lori is fabulous. And then with that being said, my intention today, after getting those two things out of the way, is to talk to you about how to have a breakthrough in managing interruptions. Now, we kind of know interruptions are problematic in our practice. We know that interruption causes a lack of focus. We know it shows somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes before you recover from an interruption. We also know that interruptions are rewarding, and we get dopamine hits from them. This is why people like to play with text. This is why people like to play on Facebook. This is why people like to play with email, because you're getting great responses with your dopamine hits. So if you look at it, you know, there's an emotional response, but there's also a tremendous financial cost to interruptions. The average lawyer gets about 7 interruptions per hour. If you think about that, you're getting about 50 to 60 interruptions per day. The average length of interruptions is 5 minutes. If your average billable rate is 400, it's probably costing you $1,600 a day in unbilled or disrupted billing time. And it's only going to get worse as you grow your practice. And this is one of the things, if you're multitasking right now, I'm just going to ask you to look at the screen for 2 minutes, because this is a big thing that a lot of lawyers don't get. Your success over time as an attorney will start to cap your growth. And here's what happens. The more staff you grow and add onto your practice, the more interruptions you will get. So the more people that you hire, the more they will interrupt you. The more referral sources you get, the more interruptions you'll get from the referral sources. The more clients you get, the more you'll get more interruptions. And the more cases you'll get more interruption from opposing counsel and things related to those cases. So as you grow, you'll actually increase in a multiple way interruptions. So as a young lawyer or a lawyer who's growing their practice, interruptions are going to magnify over time if you don't understand what they are and how to deal with them. And interruptions are not the disease, they're a symptom of the disease. And so as you look at this and think about this, I want you to kind of take a big picture perspective, which is really when you're growing your practice, you want to think about how do you first and foremost manage your own focus and how do you be a good focused practitioner. As you grow, you'll start to learn how to manage your team. And then as you grow further and you start to scale up, learn how to manage your managers. The thing that I want you to take away is that interruptions are interruptions. The types and nature changes as your practice grows, but the interruptions are still going to be interruptions. So as you grow, you're really trying to figure out how do I stay ahead of the interruption curve, which is a byproduct of more people, more cases, more referral sources. So interruptions are actually an incredible way of your practice warning you about what's coming next. I usually liken it to a barking dog. A dog doesn't bark just to bark. The dog is barking to warn you. Unless you have my dog Max, which barks to bark. But you have to think about, why is a dog barking? What's going on? Why are you getting interrupted? What is going on? What is the interruption telling you about practice? And the big challenge for us is that people are paying us to focus and solve their complex problems. So when you think about it, one of the things we're dealing with is really attention residue. The last email you saw, the mail that got tossed on your desk, the text that you received from a referral source, a family member, or client, it distracts your focus. And that's really what people are paying you for, is your ability to judge and think about their problem. And when you think about it, not all interruptions are the same. Not every interruption is created equal. Some are high priority, high impact, an actual emergency. High priority, low impact might be an upset client, but a client that you can manage to talk to later. Not everything needs to drop to deal with it. A low priority, low impact might be somebody calling to sell you something. A salesperson saying, "Hey, look, would you like to buy this new SEO package?" Low priority, high impact might be, "Hey, your CPA is trying to get on your calendar to talk about your taxes and your finances." So, different types of interruptions have different levels of priority for you. And not all interruptions are created equal. And so when you think about it, you really are starting to have different interruptions actually from different sources. And those different sources may have different priorities attached to those interruptions for you. So you'll have interruptions from your team. And usually your team is going to be client service interruptions. It might be they need something, they're trying to schedule something, a client's upset, they need to get your attention. You'll have interruptions from your clients. Your clients need things and they're trying to get your attention. And of course, one of the biggest problems, one of my biggest personal problems, is what's called self-interruptions. I am a masterful procrastinator. So what I will do is find something more interesting to do than what I actually have to do that I'm trying to avoid. So I'll have ways of interrupting myself. I'm just incredible at it. And so when you look at these three sources, you'll find that you have external interruptions, phone calls, walk-in, texts, someone that's coming by the office, your office, to socialize. What we would consider a one quick question, client calling with one quick question. Somebody needs signatures, and sometimes you have just stupid interruptions. One of my favorite interruptions, that stories of all time, is one of my wonderful clients, Kimberly Lee, calls it the Lee family emergency. And this is a true story. She gave me permission to tell the story, but sometimes these things actually happen. She is in, the way she tells the story, the short version, she's middle of a client appointment. High net worth client. She does estate planning in California, fantastic client. And she gets an emergency interruption from her assistant saying, "Your son's on the phone. He says it's an emergency." So Kimberly drops what she's doing, apologizes, excuses herself from this high-end meeting with this big important client, runs out and her son goes, yeah, Mom, I can't find the salt. I can't find the salt. I'm making something and I can't find where the salt is at. So sometimes you have family that thinks their emergency or whatever it might be, it's their emergency. It's not really your emergency. So you start to notice these crazy interruptions, which make you mad and frustrated. But you also have what we have internal interruptions in being distracted by email. Some of us use Slack. Some of us get text messages. Some of us have our cell phone sitting next to us throughout the day. We get other notifications from our team. We have field of vision, and then getting distracted, just trying to stay focused during the day. All of these things are sources and causes for interruption. And if you're trying to take your practice to the next level, if you're trying to take your finances to the next level, if you're trying to take your thinking to the next level, understanding and naming to tame these interruptions becomes the next phase of growth for you. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of strategies to think about it. First one is pretty straightforward and simple. Capture and study your interruptions. And I know this sounds simple and easy, but most lawyers won't do this. They won't do the work here. And so interruptions are an incredible source of data about your business. And so I'm going to recommend, and we'll post the interruptions log in the chat box for you, but I keep mine, and this is mine right now. I've been keeping it for the past 2 days on my desk. Keep an interruption log on your desk. Now, we typically recommend that you track it for 2 weeks. You're going to see that on the worksheet itself. I'm going to recommend that you just track it for a couple of days. You don't need a lot of time. You probably want to print out 2 or 3 of these because we go through them pretty quickly. The lines to write on are pretty small. But I keep it on my desk and I handwrite on it. I don't try and type it. I just handwrite directly on it. And I try and figure out, okay, what was the source of the interruption? Who was it? Was it a text? Was it somebody that came and interrupted me? Was it a phone call I didn't anticipate? And then what was the importance of the interruption? And was it A level, a B level, or C level to me? In some cases, I'll actually go through and color code them. And if you want to take this on, it's a really cool approach. I will color code green for times where I've interrupted myself. We're in the middle of a project. I decide I want to go check my email. I decide I want to go do something that's not directly on point. Team, if my team comes in and interrupts me, I'll mark yellow because they had a question or issue and I don't know what that's about. And then client interruptions. I got interrupted last night at dinner from a client who was upset about something and wanted to have a quick 20-minute conversation with me about something. And it really was an emergency. They were just upset about something. So I pushed them off till later in the week to talk about it. My guess is that emergency will probably evolve and devolve over time, but it was something that was important to them and they texted me about it. So it made my log and I highlighted pink so I can track it. So I can see who's what. Now, the second thing that you want to do, stage 2 of this, is really to look at what can you learn from the interruptions. And so we've given you an interruptions log analysis. And this tool is designed for you to take your first worksheet and kind of go through and ask questions about it. The questions are such as, who or what and why. And we talked about highlighting it. Rank the impact, asking yourself, is it worth it to fix it? Put together a brainstorming plan to fix it, and then execute your plan, and then ask yourself how you did. So these are 2 kind of self-coaching worksheets that allow you to manage the interruptions or look at the interruptions and figure out what they are and how to deal with them. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of strategies. We don't have a lot of time together, but one of the things that you're going to discover is that your team, your support team, is going to interrupt you a lot. And a lot of this has to do with a couple of issues. One is they're usually interrupting you because they don't have enough access to you. They don't know how to get your attention. They don't know when to meet with you. They don't know what to do. So they come in and interrupt you. They'll do that by texting, email, phone calls, or just walking into your office. 2, they lack training. And so they don't know how to do certain things. If they don't know how to do certain things, they come to you to do the certain things. And 3, they may notice that there's a process in, there's a defect in your process or systems in the firm. They're not sure what to do next. So they come to you to say, what should I do here? So a lot of times in your practice, your team is actually coming to tell you things, not what you exactly what you want to hear, but they're telling you things because either they can't get your attention, you haven't trained them how to deal with it, or they don't know what to do next in a system or process. So capturing this information is a fantastic way of moving the practice forward. Now, one of the simple techniques and we're going to share with you today is a really simple thing called question batching. Now, a lot of lawyers have gotten the philosophy or the approach that you can just tell your team, hey, if you need anything, just come in and see me. We think that's a terrible approach. What we really think you should do is set up a pre-meeting on a 15-minute in the morning or maybe a 15-minute in the afternoon meeting with your team and have them question batch. And so they can write out their questions, and we gave you the question batching worksheet that you can share with your team. And the purpose of this is to get them organized. So when they come in and meet with you, it's a focused 15-minute session. It doesn't have to be, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there throughout the day. It's a focused session that they can be prepared and you can be prepared to help deal with them. The second thing about this is that you'll notice that there's certain types of interruptions that seem to occur over and over. And so what you can do is start setting up meetings on your calendar through the week to plan for those, whether those are quick huddles like we talked about, or having a regular team meeting to manage some of the questions that normally will pop up. Also a great opportunity for training, by the way. But it allows you to start to reduce the amount of interruptions during the week because you're training your team when you want to talk about that stuff and how you want to talk about that stuff. Step 2 is client expectations. And we're going to have just a really basic conversation about this. Client expectations, when you're growing your practice, you're new to the field, you're going to make a lot of promises to clients that you'll be there for them. But as your practice grows, it's going to be harder and harder. When you're managing 25 cases, one thing. When you're managing 250 cases, it's a whole other different ballgame. So one of the things that you want to think about as your practice grows is how do you manage client interruptions? And a lot of this has to do with you teaching your team on how to manage client interruptions. Are you talking to the clients about expectations? And expectations on how and when you'll communicate with them is number one, because they're going to expect that when they call the office, they get to talk to you immediately. So what you want to do is explain to them how the phone call process works, or how and when you respond to emails, or whether or not you will respond to texts, or how and when you'll respond to anything to social media communications, such as Facebook messaging. And so they'll find different ways to try and get past your team to communicate directly with you. So you have to set the expectations way in advance of how best to communicate with you. One of the best ways to do that is to train your team and your clients on what's called the designated hitter. And the designated hitter is like a term from baseball, but this is the person that you teach your clients to interact with on everything other than substantial legal judgment issues. This can be calendaring, this can be discovery, this can be scheduling, it can be anything other than substantial legal judgment. But when you think about it, the challenge for you is really kind of setting the expectation for the client on how to interact with you. Now, the truth is, if you don't set the expectation, the client's going to make up the expectation. And they're going to set the expectation in their mind of what they think you should be doing. So if you don't lay down the expectation or the boundaries, they're going to assume that their expectations should be met, not necessarily your expectation. So we have to kind of get ahead of this as you start to try and learn how to manage your interruptions. The third thing, and this is a difficult one, it's really about managing your focus. This is probably the biggest challenge that a lot of us have, because one of the hardest things to do is manage your focus when you're tired. It's very hard to manage your focus when you're burned out. It's very hard to manage your focus. Sorry, my microphone just slipped and fell. It's very hard to manage your focus when you've got 55 things flying at you in a 1 hour window. So when you look at managing your focus, and you can take a screenshot of this if you want, or if you want, you can rewatch this presentation if you want. But these are probably the top 6 things that I see lawyers deal with over and over and over with in their practice. Number 1 is procrastination. And procrastination comes from you're afraid of dealing with something, or you're trying to deal with something perfectly. And it's one of the big challenges that we have as attorneys is trying to deal with perfection. And sometimes we have the way that we do that is to avoid doing certain things. And if you're new to the business, or if you're doing something you never had before, by nature, you're going to want to avoid it because it's terrifying. And that's usually what you see in a lot of practices, a tremendous amount of procrastination. And when procrastination is evident for you emotionally, you'll go do something else, whether it goes, you go online to shop, you go online to check the news, you do something else that's far more interesting than the challenge in front of you. You will typically find something to do if you're trying to avoid this. 2 distractions, texts, alerts. I recommend to lawyers that maybe they have just a professional email address and then get everything else on a personal email address. Sometimes in practices depending on who the attorney is, if they're a managing attorney, I may give them 5 different email addresses to work with, one being for clients, one being for partners, one being for staff, so that they can manage the communication. Now, remember, email at the heart of it is a communication tool. How you're communicated with is up to you. The terms of that communication is up to you. 3 is that we're tendency, especially those of us who are litigators, are trained to respond to only urgent deadlines. So we have a tendency not to do anything until we have to do something. 4, we believe we can multitask, which is not particularly true. There's a lot of studies that show that multitasking is a myth. Really, it's kind of a terrible thing to do, especially if you're trying to do high focus on a complex problem. 5, bored. For a lot of lawyers, if they don't have something exciting to do, they get bored. And sometimes some of the work that we do can be very boring. It can be very routine. And so lawyers have a tendency to get bored, so they interrupt themselves to go do something else that's less boring. And 6, thinking about something. And this is just another form of sophisticated procrastination. I see a lot of lawyers say, well, I'm thinking about it. And really, they're saying I'm thinking about it as a way of avoiding dealing with it, because it sounds much more better than I'm procrastinating. So it's just a sophisticated form of procrastination, really what it is. So when we look at these things, self-interruption is probably the biggest killer behind the scenes. So as you start to work with this, you're going to be dealing with self-interruption and external interruptions impacting your practice. Your job is to start to identify them, figure out why they're impacting your practice, why they're impacting you, and starting over a time period to chip those away. Now, when we began the presentation, I said one of the things you want to be aware of is that as you grow, your opportunity for being interrupted will multiply greatly by clients, referral sources, cases, staff. So if you're looking at another 10, 15, 25 years in this career, the ability to understand, diagnose, and transform that frustrating interruption into a opportunity is an incredible skill set at this point in time. It's basically interruption jujitsu. You're taking it and flipping it around so you can use it as an advantage in your practice. With that being said, I'm just going to encourage those of you that would like to come to the next workshop that we're teaching on the 24th to do that, because we're running out of time for today, about 5 or 6 minutes. And then we have the upcoming free LinkedIn, leveraging LinkedIn for your law practice. And before I bring us to a close today, I've saved just a few minutes for any questions or issues that anyone may have that I can help support them in with this. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody's got any questions or issues on the application. Justin, please, sir.
Thank you for the information and the training. So I have a client, a husband and wife, and they want to call like every week. And so I've kind of told them, I've tried to get into the habit of saying, all right, this is my schedule the next week. This is what I'm going to be doing on your case. This is what you can be doing. Text me, email me anytime, but understand that you may not hear from me this time next week. They always want to call Friday afternoon. And
wow.
they're polite and they're nice people, and I try and be polite with them, but I also get frustrated. And so I don't know if my problem is I'm not articulating the boundaries or the expectations clear, or if they're just disregarding them. Do you have any tips on either end on how to manage that?
No, that's great. Justin, what type of practice?
Personal injury work.
Okay, great. And where's the case at? Is it pre-suit or is it in litigation?
We're in litigation. We've done party depositions, and
Okay.
we've got 2 defendants. I've got an expert for one of the defendants, and I'm looking for another, but it's been a bunch of dead ends.
Got it. Got it. So it's a complicated case, high maintenance clients. I think your approach is fantastic. What I would recommend, just as someone of jujitsu, when they email you or text you or call, your response needs to be, that's fantastic. Write that down. We'll talk about it on our weekly meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they reach out to you, you have to be quick on the jujitsu and just say, that's a great question. That's a great issue. Write it down. We'll talk about it in our weekly meeting.
Okay.
And then I would have a preset agenda on the weekly meeting, and I would have a preset time. How long is the weekly meeting set up for right now?
It doesn't really have a time schedule.
Okay, so we're going to have to set it for 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, so I would say that when they email you, text you, or what have you, say, it's a great question. Let's put it on the weekly meeting agenda. And then before you have the meeting, maybe the morning of, if you can pull this off, saying, here are the things that we're going to focus on today's meeting.
Okay.
And so you could say progress report, what's next, any questions, boom. And give it a 30-minute time budget, and start with a 30-minute time budget for about 3 or 4 weeks. Then let's see if we can shrink it to a 15-minute time budget after that. Because what you're trying to do is train them to not interrupt you. We're trying to train them to be prepared for the meeting and trying to train them how long these meetings are going to last with you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then if we're going into trial, then obviously they're probably going to consume a little bit more time, but it sounds like you're just helping coach them through their anxiety, not necessarily deal with legal issues, right?
Yeah, and we're kind of taught when it is talking about legal issues, like they just want to talk about the same stuff over and over.
Yep. And then,
Yeah.
so you may want to, on your agenda, say old news, new news, right?
Okay.
And say, now that we've already talked about that, folks. That's under the old news. We've talked about this. Is there anything new we need to talk about? Okay, I can't do anything more about the old news. All right, great. Let's write that down. Let's, maybe encourage them to journal stuff. Encourage them to write it down. Send them a notebook. Journal this. Write it out, and then we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah. One thing that did help is like I've started giving them to-do work.
Oh, hell yeah.
And
Yes.
and that's worked really good.
Yes.
It occupies their energy. They feel like they're working on the case.
Yep.
And I was kind of worried they'd be like, you're my lawyer, you do this work, but they loved it.
Oh yeah.
They loved it.
How old are they? How old the
Like
clients?
early 40s.
Yeah. Have them journal. Have
Okay.
them journal, track it. I love it. Just give them projects to do. That's a great solution, Justin. So good job.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Justin, I was just going to say, I do PI also. If you're going to give them a journal, make sure you tell them that they need to address it at the top, that it's for my attorney's eyes only, it's attorney-client privilege, it's work product, or something to keep it privileged.
That's
Yeah,
a great
good
tip.
job.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job, Jennifer, and warn them not to share anything on social media, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, I just wanted to say real quick, I do PI also. So I sent you a chat message if you'd like to connect offline and talk about it too.
Definitely.
Good.
Thank you.
That's good. That's why I love our group programs. People support each other and share a lot of things on the group programs. Well done, Jennifer. Well done. Jennifer, anything for you?
Oh, my biggest interruptions, I plead guilty to every single thing on your list. I procrastinate. Oh, I got a good email from Nordstrom. What's on sale? I mean, they run the gamut. But a lot of my interruptions also are my paralegal. I'm entirely virtual. My paralegal is in another state, so
Gotcha.
it's not that we can't have a a productive 15-minute meeting every morning that's just based on what questions did you write down yesterday. It's real. We really are more like
Yeah.
talking every day. And I think a lot of my interruptions come from also because I'm in PI, and in PI you have such a necessity of getting the call with the potential new client ASAP, but my
Yes.
schedule can vary day to day. And so my paralegal calls me frequently with, here's the PNC I just did an intake on, here's the issues I see. What do you think? Do you want to talk to this person? When do you want to talk to this person? And it can easily turn into a 15-20-minute phone call.
Yep.
That's not
So
planned for.
Yeah, so that becomes a whole intake process, right? So usually in an intake, you have basically 4 types of prospects: P1, P2, P3, P4. P1 is teaching her, so you're having her triage a lot of the leads too. So I think part of that's kind of breaking apart your intake process. P1 being, yeah, no, thank you. P2 being, sounds like an interesting case, but I need more information. P3 might be a decent case. P4 means, yeah, interrupt me for this type of a case. And so it may be that you kind of start to coach her through what is a case that needs to be interrupted. And you guys can have a preset meeting in the morning and the afternoon. A lot of the lawyers that we work with virtually, we try and get them to have a preset time in the morning and a preset time in the afternoon to meet with their virtual team. Especially, unless in your case, Jennifer, if you're like, hey, let me do like let me talk to you every 30 minutes or every hour on the hour for 10 minutes to keep things flowing, that might work. I don't know. Have you ever had your disc taken, Jennifer or Colby, or any profile assessments?
I did one years ago, but years ago is not recent. So
yeah, so that's one of the things on our website. You'll see what's called a practice growth diagnostic. I think it's like $295 to do that. That includes a disc assessment. Sometimes based on your disc profile, which is DISC. Some people, stands for dominant, influence, steadfast, and conscientious. Some different profiles need different forms of interaction. So if I knew your paralegal and your profile, I would say, you guys need to talk about every 45 minutes. But if you have my profile, I need to talk to somebody in the morning, in the evening. I don't want to talk to anyone during the day while I'm focused on other things. So it might have a lot to do with your DISC assessment, like your personality assessment more so. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that because I don't get too far afield past my allotted time. Okay, great. So Jennifer, Justin, thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck. I'd like to see you guys in one of our upcoming programs. Hopefully I'll see you next week or so on the How to Ask Lawyers for Business workshop. And with that, Denise, I'm gonna just check with you. Is there anything that you want to add? I have Denise Gamez here from our company. No. And Abby, are we good? Anything that I missed? All right, good. All right, everybody take care. All right, thank you.